All right, so yesterday and on Friday, you guys, all right, listen please. You guys did your lab. You looked at 3 types of cells, 2 plant cells, 1 animal cell. You were supposed to draw one of each type of cell that you saw and label certain organelles within that. Remember, the labeling is important. Your line should touch the organelle that you are trying to label. Now what I want to do here to begin is show you some pictures taken through the microscope of some of these cells, so you're sure that you saw exactly what you should have seen. If as I do this, turns out maybe your drawing's incorrect or you weren't seeing the correct thing, you may redraw it or relabel it, right, based on what I'm about to show you. So if we look at this first type of cell that we have, raise your hand and tell me which of the 3 cells does this show? Maria? No? No. Onion. No. Why onion? Onion. Why? How do we know it's onion? It isn't. Well, what is not there that tells you this is the onion cell?
The cell. The green.
What?
I mean, not the green. The green is not.
Yeah, the green chloroplasts are not there. That tells you that this is not the Elodia cell because that had chloroplasts. These are the onion cells. So what you're seeing here is under medium power, a bunch of different cells. So you see, probably 20 or so cells in this view. So when we look at something like this, this is what your drawing should look like. You should have drawn one of these. So if I outline, this is one cell. Here's another cell. Here's another cell. Here's another. So those are the cells. Okay, you could see inside of those some other parts. So you should have drawn one of these. Here's a view under high power. Again, this is a single onion cell. Here's another onion cell. So when you're looking at this, it's very easy to label the parts. The parts that you were asked to label in the onion cell were the cell wall, the cytoplasm, and the nucleus. Those are obvious in these pictures. Okay, so that's the onion cell. Did everyone's look pretty much, your drawing is pretty much what I'm showing you? Again, if it's not, you may redo it. Okay, now these cells were stained differently than yours. These are cells stained with methylene blue. We used iodine. The idea is the same though. These will be blue, but yours looked yellowish in color, orange in color. So again, which cell are we looking at here? Raise your hand if you can tell me. Jake? Those are cheek cells. Raise your hand if you could tell me why you know they're cheek cells. What tells you that these are cheek cells and not one of the others? Caleb? They're not green. Nevaeh? They're not all the same. Their shapes vary. Olivia? They're rounder. Good. So yeah, these are cheek cells. Here I could see, 6 or 7 cheek cells. Some are, clustered together. Some are separate. This is a very good example here. This is one cheek cell sort of on its own. Again, here's a single cell. Okay, here's another one. Here's 2 more. There's 2 more. So again, in this, it's pretty easy to see the parts that I asked you to label. It's easy to find the cell membrane and the cytoplasm and the nucleus. And then we have our last one. So this is the Elodia. Again, here you're seeing maybe 10 Elodia cells all kind of stacked together. For example, here is one single Elodia cell, this rectangle. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another. So that's one individual cell that you should have drawn. And these cells, you can clearly see. Yep, you may use any of those in the back. So again, the parts I asked you to label here were the cell wall and the chloroplast. Both of those things are very easy to label, easy to see in this drawing. Okay, so that's what your drawings should be like. And hopefully that's what you saw when you were using the microscopes yesterday and on Friday. Any questions about anything else on that cells lab? Okay, so let's continue on in our notes a little bit. So really this information that we're going to go over today, none of it is really new. It's kind of a review of the organelles, because your quiz on Friday is about the organelles, what they do, and what they look like. So sometimes, Jake, no, we'll go back to it after, but you have it labeled on another slide. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some analogies to help us better understand what these various cell organelles do, what their function is. Right? So what is an analogy? So when we say an analogy, what does that mean, Anthony? Not really your hypothesis.
Isn't that in English?
You may use it in English. Like if I, for example, say,
Your understanding.
how can help you understand? If I say, Mr. Curie is like a troll, that would be an analogy I'm making. Okay? Now I'm not saying Mr. Curie is a troll, right? But what I would use that for is if we understand sort of something, we can use that to help us understand sort of an unknown thing. If you know what a troll is, then you may have some idea about some of Mr. Curie's traits. Okay? So we can do the same with our cell organelles. Okay, we can look at an example and make the analogy of if the cell were like a city, then different organelles would be like different parts of that city. So let's look at this and talk about some of these. We're going to say that this cell city is a plant cell, first of all. Okay, it's a plant cell. So in this city, the fence around the outside that protects the city, what cell organelle would you say that is similar to? What is that an analogy for? Haley? Yeah, it would be like the cell wall. Go ahead and write that next to number 1. I don't have it filled in on the notes, but you just write it in. Yeah, the gate or the fence would be like the cell wall, giving sort of shape to the cell, gives shape to the city. And that's slightly different from number 2, sort of the guardhouse, the gate of the city. What would that be like, Olivia? Yeah, that's more like the cell membrane. Because what does the cell membrane do? Yeah, it controls what can go into and out of the cell. Like this sort of guardhouse controls what can go into and out of the city. So that's similar to the cell membrane. Number 3. So here we have a construction site. This is a project which they're building the parts of the city. They're putting new buildings in, creating something. So what might you say that's similar to in the cell? What organelle? Vinny?
Golgi bodies?
No, I wouldn't say Golgi bodies.
No,
Haley? No? We're building like the structures of the city, the buildings. It's one part in the cell that builds something that's used to actually create the cell itself. Sam?
can't say it because it'll be the
No? Living things are made mostly of proteins.
Oh!
Yeah?
Ribosome?
Yeah, those are the ribosomes. Most of the cell is made of protein material. The ribosomes make protein in the cell. So the 3 is the ribosome. Now 4, I can understand you choosing 2 different things for 4. There's 2 options, I would say, for number 4? What's one of them? Anthony?
The ER.
ER might be one. And what's the other? Ryan? Yeah, Golgi body. So which one do you think this is? I'm going to say that it's just one of those because of the roads that lead from this transport company. What do you think, Sydney? Why are you saying Golgi bodies?
Because it transfers it.
But where does the Golgi body transport things? It gets things ready to do what? We just talked about our question of the day. Yeah?
To leave the cell.
To leave the cell. Does it look like there are any roads leaving the transport company going out of the gate?
No.
So that's why I tend to think it's another organelle, which was what? The ER. The ER transport things within the cell. So let's call number 4 the ER. Now, if it was the UPS building or the post office, then I would say Golgi body. But it looks like it's just moving things around within the city. How about the power plant, which creates the electricity that's needed in the city, the energy that it needs? Sam?
Is it? It's I remember. It's just to the mitochondria.
Yep. Mitochondria.
Number 5.
Yeah, number 5. That's the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. It is where the energy the cell needs will come from. Mitochondria. Good, Sam. Number 6 is greenhouse nursery, where they're growing the food for this city. Rosie? Chloroplast, right. Chloroplasts are where photosynthesis happens, where the cell makes food, glucose for itself.
See, only plants have it, right?
Only plants have it, correct. Well, there are some protists and other things, but that's beyond what we need to talk about today. Number 7 is this sort of waste disposal plant and dump recycling center. Breaks down the waste, the garbage from this city. Haley? No, they get stuff to send out. Not so much recycling. There's another organelle that helps break down waste and other materials. It's one we didn't talk a ton, Trey. Lysosome, right. Lysosome. They digest, if an organelle is no longer working, they break it down. They recycle its material.
How do you spell that?
Lysosome.
MEN.
LM. How about the government building? The mayor's offices or the White House or whatever you want to call it in this city. What would that analogy be? Kyle?
Nucleus?
Yeah, it'd be like the nucleus. That's what directs the cell's activity. Then finally, number 9, these storage tanks that are storing material for the city. You've heard from all of these people so far. Any new participants? Caleb?
Cytoplasm?
No, not quite cytoplasm. Bing? Those are vacuoles. Vacuoles are storage areas for different materials within the cell. The nucleus. Nucleus? All right, good job on that. So again, by making these analogies, they can help us sort of understand and think about what the organelles do. I have some more for you. You don't really have to write these down. You kind of can walk. But it doesn't say the organelle, right?
No.
All right.
So you have to write this down?
You don't have to. It's up to you. The cookbook. Now, this one we haven't talked about yet. It has the instructions about how to make something. Okay? What structure in a cell has the instructions about how to build it, how to build the parts within it? Any ideas about that? No? So this has the recipes for building things. It controls the cell as well. Yep. You're getting there, but it's actually a part that's within the nucleus. What actually within the nucleus has the information? Anthony? Not the nucleolus. There's another part. This is what makes you who you are. You inherited these. Half from your mother, half from your father. Chromosomes. They're the chromosomes. Next, we have this picture. I don't know what's happening in my overhead, but it says eat fish for protein. Fish provide a good source of protein. What organelle would that be, Caleb? Ribosome. How about the doorway of this store? What would that represent? Sydney? I would say maybe the wall would be the cell wall, but the door itself? Bria?
Cell membrane.
I would say cell membrane, yes. Alright, how about the chef here? Chef making food for the...
I know this one.
Okay?
Ribosome?
No.
So mitochondria?
You're talking about protein. No. Making food, not storing food.
Yeah, I know.
Making it. Rosie?
I'm good.
Reggie? Chloroplast, yes. Chloroplast. Okay, how about the wind turbine, which generates electricity? What would that be similar to in the cell? Sam? I love this one. I always call me for that. Yes, the mitochondria. How about the garbage truck? A garbage truck. Kyle? I could almost see where you would say vacuole if it stores waste, but then actually getting rid of it would be something else. Mary? Lysosome. Raise your hand. Now this one's kind of strange picture. These teddy bears and floats floating in the river. What it is referring to is the actual river itself in which these teddy bears are sort of floating. What would this be? This is one that people always mix up with another organelle. The stuff that holds and suspends these teddy bears as they're making their journey. Sydney.
Never mind.
Jake? No? Olivia? No? Holds and suspends these bears as they float merrily down the river. Jake? No. Haley? Cytoplasm. Now let me say something. That many times people confuse two organelles because they have a similar sound and similar ending. The two organelles that people confuse all the time are cytoplasm and chloroplast. Okay? So try to make sure you focus on knowing the difference between those two. Okay? Think about, so what is cytoplasm like? How did I describe cytoplasm? Like sort of this jelly, sort of goo that suspends the organelles in place. Think about it like this, Sam. Be quiet. Cytoplasm has a Y in it because that goo is yucky. You can connect yucky to that goo, then you can remember cytoplasm is the gel that suspends everything in the cell. Okay, so cytoplasm has a Y for yucky. The storage tanks, the oil storage tanks. Vinny, vacuoles. The river carrying these boats down the stream. Vinny? Maybe. Or the ER. Either one would be fine. A few more. The instruction manual about how to do something. The information. Mia. Nucleus, or I might say chromosome. The train. Raise your hand, please. The train. Reggie. ER. Transports. The letter carrier. The postal official. The mail person. Ryan.
The Golgi body.
Golgi bodies. Your dresser drawer where you store all of your socks, let's say. Sam?
I guess it starts with an I.
A what?
Spite. No, it's the other one.
Sydney? Vacuole for storage. How about this? This guy looks kind of familiar.
Sure.
I didn't say that. You guys said it, so don't blame me for that one. You guys said it. It's not very nice, students, to talk about a teacher in that way. I'm very disappointed in you.
That guy looks like a little Mr. Huey, Mr. Duos.
All right, Sydney, what does this strange-looking individual represent? Which cell organelle, not which teacher in the next room over? What? Cell membrane, controlling what goes in and out. Finally, the battery.
Funny.
Kyle. Mitochondria. All right. So, Sam, couple things. You have this slide, although the boxes didn't copy on your handout, but we have some stuff to fill in. So when we look at living things, we talked about cell theory and the idea that cells are the basic unit of life. Everything that's alive is made of cells. And the smallest living thing you can have is a single-celled organism, a bacteria, something like that. And it's made of just one cell. But that can still be alive. Cell is the basic unit of life. But we know more complex organisms like us, we're also made of cells. Okay? And so, for example, in us, you can have one single muscle cell in our body. That's one cell, and it's an important part of how our body works. But in complex living things, these individual cells, they work together in groups to do certain jobs. A whole bunch of muscle cells form what we call muscle tissue. Okay? So a group of these cells working together for a certain job is muscle tissue. For example, you probably learned in health there's 3 types of muscle tissue. There's smooth muscle tissue, cardiac, and skeletal muscle tissue.
I would take help.
So we have all those various types of tissue in our bodies. They're made of cells working toward one goal. At the same time, different types of tissue can work together. And they form what we call organs, a group of different tissue working together for some task is called an organ. I'm sure you can name organs in the human body. The liver, the kidney, the brain, the heart. Those are organs. Each of those organs is made of several tissues arranged in a way that help it complete some function. Like our heart is an organ in our body. It's made of muscle tissue and nerve tissue, connective tissue. And then we can be in an even more advanced stage of a bunch of these organs working together to do some task is called an organ system, like the cardiovascular system, the skeletal system, the nervous system, the excretory system. Those are groups of organs that are linked together in different ways to carry out some specific function for that living organism. Then finally, we can have a group of these organ systems, the skeletal, endocrine, muscular, excretory system, all working together to form one complete living thing, an organism, we call it. A human, for example, or a lizard. All right. The last thing that we need to talk about is
Wait, can you put it back on?
some actual microscope images of different cell organelles. So when we draw them in our diagrams and look at them in your book, in your notes, sort of everything's nicely and neatly laid out and everything's a different color. Well, in real life, the cell organelles are not like that. They're not all a different color. They're not always looking the same and arranged in a neat way. So these are what they actually look like using an electron microscope. And let's see if you could guess what some of these organelles are. So if you look at this organelle within a cell, it's oval with all these folds inside. Does anyone know what organelle this would be? Mia? Yeah, that's mitochondria. You recognize mitochondria, like I said, it's like a bean with lots of folds inside. And what does it do? You eat a bunch of jelly beans, it will give you a bunch of sugar that you can use to get energy. The mitochondria makes energy for the cell, releases energy for the cell. In this diagram, it's about 5 micrometers long. They can vary in size.
5 what?
Micron. This one is showing these little individual sort of strips. And those are within the nucleus. They're an organelle that gives us our traits and our characteristics. You have 46 of these in the nucleus of all of your body cells.
Oh, yeah.
What are they, Haley? They're chromosomes. They carry our genetic information. They're in the nucleus. They are what make us who we are.
How many cells do we have?
What's that? Field of view. All right. Now this is showing a couple of things. Let's break it down. So first, this is within a cell. What would you call this whole circular thing here? The whole thing would be what? Right?
The nucleus.
That's a nucleus. But if we look more closely, number 1 is showing this dark area within the nucleus. What do we call that? That's the nucleolus. Its job is to make the ribosome.
You go back to the next slide, please.
What's that?
You go back to the next slide.
In a minute.
Oh.
This outer layer of the nucleus, that number 2 is pointing to, the edge. Does anyone remember the name for that? Right?
Nucleus, the envelope.
Sometimes it's called the nuclear envelope. We will usually call it, though, the nuclear membrane. And it allows things in and out of the nucleus.
Wait, would you?
Why is there a picture? Because it's shown in this picture. All right, a couple more.
Wait, give it back.
Fall down over here.
Okay.
All right, we'll come back if we need to. Yeah. So now, if you look at this cell, raise your hand and tell me what type of cell are we looking at? And give me a reason you know this. What type of cell? Jake?
I don't know if this is right, but cell wall.
Well, you are right if you're telling me the organelle, but I just want to know before I get to that, What type of cell is this, Vinny?
Plant.
A plant cell. How do you know?
Because of the square shape.
It's sort of square in shape. What's all this white stuff? That's another thing that tells you.
Oh, that's for the central vacuum.
It's that big central vacuole that gets filled up with water. That's what all this is. And Jake, what's the arrow pointing to?
The wall.
That's the cell wall. It gives a plant cell its shape, supports it. This next one is all these series of tubes. What do you think these tubes here are? Which cell organelle? Anthony?
Animal.
What's that?
Animal.
Well, it is, but I want to know what organelle this is. These tubes.
Like the type.
I just want to know what organelle it is. Tracy? That's the ER.
Oh.
Transports material within the cell.
Can we just write ER?
Yeah, that's fine. You can just write ER.
Did I ever pass, if it's, there's like a question, reactor, right?
Just write ER. All right, our last one. This delicious picture. What is it, Rosie? Click on it. Golgi bodies. These stacks of pancakes with delicious drops of maple syrup.
Oh, yeah.
What do the Golgi bodies do? Like the post office, they take things out, they package up things that are going to leave the cell.